As personal trainers, we talk a lot about rep ranges: 1 to 5 reps for strength, 8 to 15 reps for hypertrophy, more than that for endurance. Those are great guidelines for beginners and for people who don't want to overthink it. But if you're like me and you're going to overthink it anyway, the truth is actually a little more nuanced. I like to work my rep ranges based on reps in reserve. So reps in reserve is basically how many more reps you think you could have done with a given load. So like the heaviest deadlift I've ever done was 400 pounds. Just barely missed that 405. Anyway, 400 pound max, and I couldn't lift it again. So that was 0 reps in reserve. I could probably do 7 or 8 reps with 315 on a deadlift, and I would be absolutely gassed by that point. So when I am training deadlifts, if I put 315 on the bar, I will usually try and stop around 5 reps, which leaves me 2, maybe 3 reps in the tank. So 2 to 3 reps in reserve. Reps in reserve is a way of quantifying your proximity to muscle failure. Muscle failure is related to, but separate from, the burn that you feel. The burn that you feel is lactic acid building up in your muscles, and different exercises will tax different energy systems. Different muscles are also more prone to that lactic burn. I know my calves get a lactic burn before I really reach muscle failure. Anyway, it's complicated, but muscle failure is when you just physically cannot move the weight again. When we're training for strength, we want to stay pretty far from muscle failure, probably 3 reps in general. When we're training for hypertrophy, we want to get a little closer. We want to have 1 to 2 reps in reserve, and it's okay if we occasionally do go to muscle failure. If you're training for muscle endurance, it's okay to go to failure relatively often. And in general, I would say you don't want more than 1 rep in reserve. Now, you can do this with any load, right? I mean, you could stay 5 reps from failure with a really easy load. You could stay 5 reps from failure with a really hard load. But the longer your muscles are working, the more different energy systems begin to come into play. And when we're training for specific goals like strength or hypertrophy, we want to make sure that we're taxing the correct energy system. That's why you use load and a guess of how many reps you can do to figure out how long it's going to take you to get to that proximity to failure. It's like a big mixing board in a recording studio. You've got 50 different knobs you can turn. But if you're training for strength, you want to select a load that will bring you to 3 reps in reserve by the time you get to about 5 or 6 reps. For hypertrophy, you want to select a load that will get you to 1 or 2 reps in reserve by the time you get to 8 to 12 reps, right? For muscle endurance, you want to select a load that you could do for like 20 reps and then just do it until you get to about 1 rep reserve or to muscle failure. I've heard people talking about rep ranges for weight loss. The truth is, all of this stuff can result in weight loss if you're in a calorie deficit. The main way that strength training affects weight loss is you build muscle, so you're building more metabolically active tissue. The training you do will basically signal to your body that though we are losing weight, we need to hold on to muscle. You're not going to grow an appreciable amount of muscle in a weight loss phase unless you're running a very small deficit and you are recomping, which is another video. Google it if you're curious. Anyway, the most serious strength training people are going to want to count reps in reserve. It doesn't really matter how many reps you do as long as you're not way off of the range that you want to be in. Again, I know it's a little complicated and it's probably more information than most people need, but like I said, I think about this stuff anyway, right? So I thought maybe others would like to know.